Alrighty, so we're going to be talking about Slayer Fury. I'm not going to talk about Mountain Thane Fury just yet, mainly because it's not that great. It's kind of comparable in AOE to Slayer, but it's simply just not as good. Like just plain face, it's just not as good as Slayer right now. If it gives buffs, we'll take another look at it during the Heroic Week tuning. But for now, it's not as good. It's not what I'm focused on. I'm playing Slayer because it is better. For our builds, this will be our single target build here. The reason we're not running Odin's Fury anymore is because Odin's Fury got nerfed. Because Odin's Fury got nerfed, Bloodborne is not as good to run. Because Bloodborne is not as good to run, we are not running Roar with Thunderous Words. And because we're not running that, normally we were running something like this, because we wanted to buff our Odin's Fury with Bloodborne with this bleed damage bonus in the 45-second cooldown window of Odin's Fury. But because of the nerf, now we are just going back to Spear for pure single target. And the reasons why we're going to Piercing Challenge over 2 points in Cruel Strikes is honestly just a very weak talent for us compared to everything else. So putting a point in Piercing Challenge just does more damage in Cruel Strikes, and that's why we take it. The good thing about Spear, though, however, is they changed how it works. If you hit the target with Spear, that target just has a debuff on it that takes bonus critical strike damage. So you don't have to stand in the little Spear AoE anymore, which makes it way better to use. I will also have both of these builds in the description if you just want to copy-paste them. Previously, copy-paste weren't working, but now that we have our fully fleshed out hero talents, that's what we're running with. For Slayer, we're running these as our AoE talents. Normally, we did have a point in Vicious Contempt instead of Titan's Rage, but with the continued nerfs to Bloodthirst, Vicious Contempt just kind of isn't as good as overall damage with using Titanic Rage instead. So that's why we're using Titanic Rage instead, right? It's just more damage. Now, there is something you need to know about Odin's Fury specifically, and it has to deal with a mechanic called Pandemic. Pandemic is a mechanic for dot effects, where if a dot effect is below 30% of its duration, you can reapply the dot and then not lose any of that effect. So what does that mean, right? So let's take Rend, for example. It's easier to talk about this with Rend. Rend with the Bloodletting talent has a 21-second duration. However, if Rend has about 6 seconds left and you reapply Rend, instead of 21 seconds, Rend's duration will go up to 27 seconds. The reason why this Pandemic mechanic exists is because previously, reapplying your dots before they ran their full duration is just simply a damage loss, but also having to reapply your dots very specifically instead of when you have time to is kind of bad. It was kind of shit as a mechanic, right? So this means that for our Odin's Fury, it works the same way. And that is the Pandemic mechanic. So what I'll show you is Odin's Fury only has a 4-second duration, but when you pop Avatar with this talent Titan's Torment, you cast an Odin's Fury. So in your opener is going to be Recklessness, Charge, Rampage, Avatar, Bladestorm, and then you're going to cast Crushing Blow, Rampage, then Odin's Fury again. So it'll look something like this as for your opener. Because this will overcap, but here's the thing about Crushing Blow. It does so much damage that it is worth overcapping your Rage for. So even though we're basically overcapping here, because we have the Recklessness uptime, you still send the Rampage and then the Bloodthirst. See, we have 3 stacks. We're about to have 3 stacks. Shazamo. And then we get our cooldown. So, this is our cooldown structure, right? This is what our best buttons are. And you'll see some additional buttons here. Bladestorm is our highest damage button. We want to hit it on cooldown so we can reduce the cooldown as much as possible. After Bladestorm, our priority goes to Execute if there's 3 stacks of marked for execution. After your target gets hit by 3 hits of Slayer Strike, your imminent demise will proc. Now, here's the thing that is weird about Slayer and about this mechanic. You would assume you would need sudden death to make this work. However, because sudden death stacks up to 2 times and is just a buff that lets you cast execute for free, we don't actually need sudden death to get this sudden death proc. So that's why we don't take sudden death and instead take the additional Raging Blow damage because it's better. Now, because we're buffing Raging Blow to such a large degree, it becomes our best button. Even if we're in a situation like this, right? Where we're here, we Blade Storm, and we're overcapping Rage, right? Even in this situation, you press Crushing Blow before your Rampage because of how much damage Crushing Blow does. And these are the numbers currently on my character. So... and this is how I built the priority system. So you will use Crushing Blow even if you're overcapping Rage. You will not use Bloodbath if it means you're going to overcap Rage, because if you're overcapping Rage with Bloodbath, it means you're not rampaging to get you to another Crushing Blow. Now, Rampage does have a damage modifier in Slaughtering Strikes. However, this is a static modifier that will just be consumed throughout the fight as things go on. Because it's just naturally consumed, we don't have to consider it, and it's not going to be any form of priority or something we think about in our rotation, right? So, it is Crushing Blow, even if you it is going to be Blade Storm. Execute if you have 3 stacks of Mark for Execution, and Blade Storm is on cooldown. If Blade Storm is not on cooldown, your priority is then Blade Storm, obviously. Then it is Crushing Blow, Rampage, Bloodbath, Onslaught, execute, like a base, just like a normal execute, right? Raging Blow, Bloodthirst, Slam, and Whirlwind. In AoE, you're obviously going to be pressing Whirlwind to get your 4 stacks of this Meat Cleaver, this Whirlwind, because that's how we do our AoE, right? So in AoE, obviously, with this being here, we're still going to do this. However, we're not going to be... However, it's just at the bottom of the priority because it does the least amount of damage as far as single target stuff is concerned. So, that is a priority. Now, what are these little numbers here, right? What are these numbers? What do they mean? These numbers here, this 31,000 damage number, this is the Reap the Storm proc divided by 12.6%. The reason being that you have a 20% chance... or sorry, that's not 12.7. So you have a 20% chance to cause a Reap the Storm proc when you press Bloodthirst. So if you have normal, like if you have really average proc rate, it means that your Bloodbath is technically worth 23,000 damage instead of this 198,000 damage number. Now, why do I have it in lower priority if it's technically more damage than Rampage? 1, because Rampage gets you back to your Crushing Blow, which is your primary damage ability. And 2, we play for consistency, not for best case scenario, right? Best case scenario is your Bloodbath procs all the time, and then it's technically your second best button above Rampage. But because we're playing for consistency, Bloodbath goes before or after Rampage, sorry. And the other reasoning is that we want to press the button that's going to do the most damage at the time we press it, which would be Crushing Blade Storm, Crushing Blow, Rampage, Bloodbath. Now, the reason Onslaught is below Bloodbath, even though it is technically more damage than Bloodbath, is because it will this automatically enrages you. So keeping it lower in the priority of Bloodbath will keep your enrage uptime way higher, thereby making your damage uptime better. But you also always want to consume these Bloodbath stacks through Reckless Abandon if you're not going to overcap Rage. If you're going to overcap Rage, once again, it's Rampage into Crushing Blow, but if you're not, it is Bloodbath, then Onslaught. And that's also why we have this 80,000 damage number here next to Execute. The reason Execute technically does 290k damage is only if you have 3 marked for execution stacks. How I got this is I divided this Blade Storm number, this 67,000 number, or 670,000 number, by 12.6%. The reason being is that, we'll bring up the calculator, right? The reason being is that Blade Storm has a 90-second CD. If you divide that by 15, which is the amount of cooldown reduction you get after consuming all 3 marked for execution stacks because of this Unrelenting Assault talent, it is about a sixth of the amount. It's a sixth of the cooldown of Blade Storm. So you take that 67,000 damage number, right? You times that by 12, or sorry, you times that by 0.12, which gives you about that 80,000 damage number. The reason it's higher is the last time I did this calculation, I did that 60, and then I times it by 0.12. And that's where I got that 80,000 number. But the reason being is that because you're reducing the cooldown of Blade Storm by a sixth, technically it does an additional 80,000 damage or a little more by getting you closer to that Blade Storm. Also, to note, that's not counting the amount of extra hits you're getting through Unhinged, and that's also not counting the amount of, where is that talent? There is another talent here. See this talent. Sudden Death accelerates your next Blade Storm, striking 1 additional time, and that also doesn't count the amount of additional damage you're doing with your Blade Storm through the additional hits of Imminent Demise. So, that being the case, if we have 3 marked for execution stacks, it becomes our highest priority button to hit if Blade Storm is on cooldown. After that, we have Raging Blow. There's just the base version of Raging Blow. Then we have Bloodthirst, which technically does more damage on Raging Blow if it does proc this Reap the Storm, but that also depends on if what crits and what doesn't crit. And Raging Blow technically can do a little more damage if it procs a reset of itself through Opportunist, but we're not trying to go that in-depth with it. We're just like, hey, Raging Blow's the better button here. Then it's Slam, then it's Whirlwind, and that is our priority. Now that was a lot to handle, right? That was a lot to handle. So to condense it down into a small thing instead of me yapping about all these different modifiers and bullshit, right? It is cooldowns. Blade Storm. If your Blade Storm is on cooldown and you have 3 marked of execution stacks, the easiest way to tell that you have 3 marked of execution stacks is the fact that you have a Sudden Death proc. Because Sudden Death will not proc unless you have gotten 3 stacks of marked for execution on your target. So that just means when you're playing the game and you're doing it normally into your normal rotation, oh, Sudden Death equals 3 procs equals priority, right? If Blade Storm is on cooldown, that's the way to think about it. It is Crushing Blow. You will Crushing Blow even if you are overcapping Rage. So if you're at 130 Rage and you are enraged and you can press Crushing Blow, you're pressing it. It is that good. Then it is Rampage, Bloodbath, Onslaught, Execute, Raging Blow, Bloodthirst, Slam, and Whirlwind. And this is your priority here. And that's kind of it. It is very simple. It is simply, hey, what does the most damage per button press? And that's why it's listed like this. There can be some nuance to it, but realistically, Warrior is and should be a very simple class, and this is what we're looking at, right? There are a lot of modifiers that make this the way it is, but this is what we're doing right here, in case you needed it. And this priority also exists for single target as well as AoE. The only thing to note, like I talked about, was that pandemic mechanic, which I'll show here. I don't remember. Honestly, it's been like 10 minutes since I talked about it, so I don't remember if I even showed it. But I'll show you here where if you avatar, some people have talked about macroing their Odin's Fury with their avatar. Do not do that. You'll lose a ton of damage. Do not do that. So what you want to do with the pandemic mechanic is, here will be your opener. You will Recklessness, Charge, Rampage, Avatar Roar, Blade Storm, Crushing Blow, Rampage, Crushing Blow, Rampage, and then Odin's Fury. So it'll look a little something like this, even in AoE, right? So even if we're overcapping, we're hitting Crushing Blow right back into this. This generates Rage, so we'll hit it. This will overcap us, so we will hit Rampage again, and now we can go into the normal rotation. And now we're just chilling with our normal priority, right? And that's it. That's how you play Free War. It is very simple. It is very straightforward. You just hit the button that does the most damage. The only thing that's not fully intuitive, like I said, is these marked for execution stacks being the highest priority, just because it reduces the cooldown of your next Blade Storm. And because your Blade Storm does so much damage, right? And we can even look at the target dummy here, where this shows all of our crushing damage, all of our... So yeah. That's just it, right? That's just it. So that's our priority. That's the video. I'm going to stop yapping. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the comments. I will go through that and or either make a new video or answer those things. But yeah, that's how you play Slayer Fury. Thank you. Bye-bye.